Thanks, Heidi. Hi, everybody. Good morning or good whatever time of day it is where you are located. I'm on the East Coast of the US, so it's a respectable late morning for me. So I'm a research software developer at Stanford, and I'm going to be telling you about the set of tools called Datapages that me and my collaborators, most notably Mike Frank, have developed to help improve data sharing. Um, and part of this will also be presented by Candice. And the link below, or not, I don't know, whatever, on the slide, is where the slides are, so you can follow along on your own if you'd like. So the plan for today is first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what a data page is and why you might want to make one. And then we're going to have a step-by-step walkthrough that Candice is going to lead about how you would get started if you were making a data page from scratch. And then we'll have a hands-on portion where you'll be able to pick a few different ways to go in terms of what to do depending on your interests and proclivities. And feel free to drop questions in the chat at any point, and I'll try to answer. Okay. So imagine that you're a researcher, hard to imagine, I know, and you've painstakingly created a high value data set. So for example, maybe you've taken body measurements from hundreds of penguins in Antarctica. I wish that's what I was doing personally. Um, Now you want to share your data with the world. How do you do that in a way that will result in people actually being able to use it? One way to think about it is you might want to follow widespread guidelines that are known as FAIR. You want your data to be findable. So someone who's interested in penguin measurements in general, but doesn't yet know that you've made these specific ones, should be able to find out about them. And then they should be able to access the data easily. They should be able to interact with the data through a variety of different systems and workflows and interoperate it with other data. And ultimately, they should be able to reuse the data for their analyses or for whatever purpose that they have. So the easiest and most common thing to do to share your data is just put a static file somewhere online, like a public GitHub repository or an OSF project. And this is pretty quick and easy for you and can come close to or even meet FAIR guidelines. But it doesn't provide much support for your audience. It misses out on a lot of those like easily modifiers within FAIR. Because to look at your data, people need to either clone your repo or download the file. They have to figure out what's going on in it, either from context or like from metadata, but that's separate from the file. Any processing or visualization that they want to do, they just have to like figure out how to do themselves. And I bet a lot of us can relate to the frustration of really wanting to look at some data, having trouble figuring out where it even is and how to download it, and then seeing it and being like, what on earth are all these columns in this spreadsheet? I don't know what to do. So on the other kind of extreme of your data sharing options, you could spend a lot of time and effort and make a uh, custom repository. You could like set up a database, make a package of code so people can access it, make a graphical user interface for people to access it, make a custom website and an app for visualizations and so on. So that would be like super helpful for the users of your data if you did all that, but it would take a ton of work and it would take a ton of time and money. And so I've done personally both of these things a number of times, and I wanted to help bridge the gap so people could get the best of both worlds. Uh, Build some tools that let people spin up a website for their data that's both reasonably easy to make and has lots of rich features that make it easy to use for users. Um, Before getting into the nitty-gritty, I'm going to show off kind of a preview of some of the final products here of what data pages can look like. If I can navigate my computer. So this is what a sort of default data page looks like if you start with a template. And as you can see, it is the aforementioned foreshadowed penguins. Um, so you immediately get a look at the data. You don't just start with like a picture of a penguin, although a picture of a penguin is also there and key to the whole enterprise. But you immediately get a bunch of interactive visualization. So someone without even actually digging into the data can immediately get a feel for what's going on in terms of what sort of variables there are in the data, and what their distributions look like, and kind of see what they might be interested in. And the other things that come for free because they're built into this template is a data browser. So they can have this like spreadsheet style view of the data, again, without downloading it, just looking at it right there. And you can add metadata so people can know more about the data in a way that's like structured. They also immediately get some code that lets them access the data from R or from Python. And you have an opportunity to fill out an about page where you can put sort of information people might want, like a description, links, a citation, and so on. And this is a website, so you could also add all sorts of other things, but that's kind of the starting point. Um, and we've built a number of more built out, more complicated websites with the same kind of structure and idea. So I'm going to show you one of them, which was the results from ManyBabies 1, which was about infant-directed speech preference. And as you can see, this is sort of a broadly similar thing with plots and data, but they're customized to the needs of this particular data set, which was a meta-analysis. And so we've got this forest plot with, again, some nice interactivity that lets you look at it, lets you filter it by things you might want to filter it by. Um, and again, there's some handy data browsers. And there's multiple data sets here that are kind of interesting to look at, both the meta-analysis and then the more kind of raw or data here on the looking time. And so both of these are available in this particular data page. Okay, so that's what we're building to. Wait, that's not entirely what I want. I want to go back into this. Okay, hang on. Okay, super smooth. Okay, so let's break down what we saw in those final products into the building blocks that make it possible. So first of all, the backend for the data is the Rediviz data platform. Uh, and using that immediately makes your data kind of versioned and programmatically accessible, enables those handy features like the data browser. On top of that, you're making a website using the Cordo scientific publishing system, and that creates a website that you can configure and customize. The centerpiece of that website are interactive visualizations that are mostly built using observable plot, which is a JavaScript framework, but you can also add static ggplot visualizations or all sorts of different stuff depending on your interests and skills. And all of this results in a static site. So that means that it's built automatically by the GitHub repository that it's in and automatically hosted as a GitHub Pages website on the repository. So you don't need to worry about things like how do I get a domain name and how do I make the website be pointed to that domain name? Like all of that stuff is kind of handled for you. Now I'm going to further break down each of these steps into some more details about what that component is about. Um, okay, so first off, like I was saying, the data is hosted on Redis. Um, And compared to something like a CSV or Excel file, your data being in Redis, meaning it's in a database under the hood, immediately makes your life and your user's life easier in a variety of ways because the variables in your data have actual types that are handled accordingly. Um, Excel can't decide that a number is secretly a date and ruin your whole life. And you can add metadata that's structurally connected to your data, like labels for variables and things like that. You also get a bunch of nice features automatically from your data being in a Redis data set. So you can make the data set fully public, or you can set more selective access controls if only some people should have access to your data, or they should jump through some hoops first or something like that. The data is versioned, which is really nice. So you can update the data, but the previous versions of it can still be easily retrieved. Your data immediately has a DOI, persistent identifier, and is discoverable from within Redis and from the web. And it's accessible both from the web, from Redis's interface here, and from the API, from a package. So you don't have to like build this API, this package. People can just use Redis's to get your data directly. Okay, that's all great, but this isn't just an ad for Redis. Redis is serving as the backend here. And what we're building on top of the backend is a front end, a website. So the way you would do that is start from this template GitHub repo. That's a template data page. And the files in this repo constitute a website backed by Cordo, which, as I was saying, is an open source scientific publishing system. So some of the parts of this are probably the single most important file is this Cordo file that defines the configuration for your website, such as what data set is it pointed at. And then there's a bunch of content pages, the home page, and then the other pages that I showed you previously when we were looking at the Penguin template. And then finally, there's these modules. There's these plots that are automatically made from your data. So you don't need to really get into them if you don't want to. You can just be like, aha, a plot was made for me. But you can also decide to dig into them and change those plots or make your own plots or do whatever. Um, and just from you using this template repo, it will have in it a GitHub action, which means that whenever you push changes to the repo, it will automatically build the website and it will put it at this URL, well, not this URL, but the corresponding URL of your repo. Okay, so the configuration part, which is the first and most important step when you're customizing it, is to hook up the website to Redis, to the dataset that you put there or used from there. So the Cordo has this little bit that is telling it, okay, use this table from this dataset from this user on Redis. And so if you are in a Redis dataset, you can figure out what to put there. So the user is the organization or the individual user. So if you did it under your account, it would be your account. The dataset is the name of the dataset, and then the table is the specific table within that you're trying to use. Pardon me. And as soon as you change that, all of the parts of the website that are using a table will immediately switch over to that table. So like the data browser, the visualizations, all that stuff will pull in that data. The homepage of the website, like we were seeing, has these various bits. So a specific way that that connects to the parts in the file is that you've got this block at the top with some description and title, and you can set that up with the content that you want. This then happens to have some penguins, but you would probably tragically have something other than penguins to put in there. Um, and then these are the plots that are automatically made for you. And as you can see, it's just by including this scatter histogram module. You don't have to rewrite the plot from scratch. There's some new functionality that we've been adding that's under active development to let you configure these visualizations without having to open the JavaScript, which is scary. No one wants to look at JavaScript if they can avoid it. Um, So something you can already do for this scatter histogram module is what happens when it's done automatically is that it tries to guess which variables in your data are numerical. That is, they would make sense to put them on the X and Y axes of the scatter plot, and which ones are categorical. And those it uses to as options for what to color by. And then it uses some defaults for what the starting values of those should be. Um, but this often can result in variables that you don't actually want to be on there. You might just have like a lot of variables and you don't want users to see, like a million variables here, or some of them might seem like numerical, but they're not actually. And so in this configuration, you can set, okay, instead of guessing, here's what variables I want the plot to use. These are my numerical ones, these are my categorical ones, and these are what I want the default values to be. And in the future, what we're hoping to have is more of these automatically made module plot types and more configuration for which plots you want with what stuff going on. Um, so that's the home page. The other pages here are, as we saw before, the data browser. And you don't have to change anything in this page if you don't want to, because it has this little shortcode thing that means embed this Rediviz embed of the table that you set up in Cordo, in the Cordo configuration. You can also add other embeds for other tables. So this format is the kind of same order of user, dataset, table. And any ones you want, you can add more embeds for. The analysis page, you again don't need to do anything to it if you just like how it is. And how it is a snippet that lets your users access your specific data set, again, the one set up in the Corda configuration, and load it in R and Python. In the About page, you will almost certainly want to customize. The About page has a bunch of stuff that creates these structured pieces of content for you. So on the left column, you can add an image and you can add links, and the links get made into these little buttons. So you might want to link other places where your data set lives or other relevant things about it, like publications. And if you have a main citation for this data set, then you can add that citation information, and these nice copyable citation blocks will be generated. And then whatever content you want, you can put on the page. Okay, so that is the start of my overview of the pieces of things. Before we move on to the next part, does anyone have any questions? No questions. Okay, well, then I will hand it over to Candice for the step-by-step walkthrough.
Thank you so much, Mika. So this is just going to be a very simple walkthrough of what you can do to get started. You guys have access to the slides as well, so it might be also helpful to go along on your own if you want to, or you can work on it after this section and we'll do breakout rooms. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and get to the first slide. So, as you could probably tell, we do need to have RStudio installed for Datapages to work. So, if you don't have RStudio, you should download that and it should be updated. And you also will have to make a Rediviz account so that not only can you put your data onto Rediviz to access it via Datapages, but so that you can also access other public data sets too, like the ManyBabies 4 data set, for instance. Okay, so now we're going to get into setting up a new data page. So this is going to be a walkthrough if you wanted to add your own data set. Um, Thank you, Gabriela. So when you do have a Rediviz account, this is what it's going to look like when you want to add a data set. You're just going to click on New Data Set and then create New Table. And this is where you're going to add your data set as a file.
And just a note here, there's a variety of formats that this can take and automatically figure out how to type it and make it into a database table.
Okay, now this is where it's getting a little bit tricky. So it's great to have like these slides to look back on. And also this is being recorded, so you can always go back to the recording as well. Because in order to get your Datapages website to talk to Rediviz to get the data, you need to have something that's called an API token. So there's going to be a video that plays here of me clicking around on Rediviz where I click on generate new token. You can name it anything that you want to make it easier for you to know what the token is for. You're going to make sure that data is checked. And then it's going to give you a string of a bunch of crazy numbers and letters. You're going to copy that string and put it somewhere safe. Like I like to Slack it to myself in a private DM with myself, just so that I have it in case you don't lose it, because it's not going to give you that string again. Okay, so now we're going to go back to GitHub and we're going to go to the Datapages template. The link is there as well. So in the video, you see that I'm on the Datapages site. I click on use this template, create new repository. You want to select include all branches, and then you can name it anything that you want to make it easy for you to know what the repo is for. You can give it a description too if you like. Okay, now this is going to be where you put your API token. So now that you have a GitHub repo of the Datapages template, you're going to go to settings, secrets and variables, and go to actions. So there I'm clicking on it. It looks like that. You're going to put, you can name your secret something. Oh, no, you should name it Rediviz API token. Okay. And then you're going to put the crazy string that you got from Rediviz into that secret space. Okay, so now what you can do is you can edit the data page. So, oh, you can make sure that the data page is talking to your data set on Redis. So you're going to go to the quarto.yml file, and it looks like there in the video at the bottom. See where it says user data pages, what data set we're using. In this example, I was using the ManyBabies 1 data set, and you also want to put the specific name of the table. That way, Rediviz will be able to talk to your data page, giving it the exact table that you want. And also one more thing is whenever you're like editing the file on GitHub, you always want to click on commit changes. Okay, so at this point, GitHub is going to kind of like think about the changes that you made. So it's going to take a few minutes. But at the top of your GitHub, where it says like your username, like in the picture example I have there, when it's still thinking about it, it has like a little yellow circle, but when it's ready, it has a green check mark. But if something went wrong, it turns into like a little red circle, and you can click on it to see what went wrong. But if it works correctly in the video there, you can see that by clicking on, maybe it'll play again, or maybe, yeah, can you go back? Okay, so yeah, click on the little settings button. And then if you check the Use Your GitHub Pages website, that'll let you access the Datapages website from your repo so that you can easily check to make sure everything worked. And the link is, yeah, in the About section. So if it worked, whenever you click on your data pages, it should show up. And if you made any changes, then it should like show up there. This one, I didn't make any changes. I was just testing the data pages template, which is the penguins. Okay, so that was everything that you need to just have your data page talk to Redis, get the data, make changes, and then push that onto your new data pages website. But you can also do this locally on your computer. You don't have to stay in GitHub if you want to. Sometimes people find it easier to just work locally on their computer in RStudio. So these next couple slides are going to be just a general overview on how you can do that. So what I recommend is what makes things easier for me when I'm working with data pages is I like to have GitHub Desktop, which is a free software that just makes it easier for you to, when you're all done with your data page, to push the changes to GitHub. So you don't have to use it. I don't think everybody uses it, but I just a recommendation. It's what I use. And I guess this video is just giving an example of like when I made a change, what it looks like on the software when I'm committing it and pushing it to GitHub. Okay, so when you're working locally, the first thing that you want to do is you want to clone it onto your local desktop. And this is really where I think that GitHub Desktop comes in handy because it makes these steps really easily. So if you see in the video, I can easily just get the URL of my GitHub repo and stick it in GitHub Desktop, and it clones it for me automatically in just a few clicks. And then now automatically all of the files from GitHub are all locally on my computer into a folder that's called GitHub. So it's really easy to find too. So now here's another part that is important, but it can easily trip me up when I was doing it. So you definitely, once you have the repo cloned and you open up the folder that has your data pages, you want to click on the R project. That's important because that'll let you use this cool tool called renv to make sure you have all of the packages installed that you need. So once you have it opened, you're going to I did not update my RStudio in that example, which is funny. But if you look for the downloading RNV OK, installing RENV OK, if that looks good, then you can go ahead and type in library parentheses RENV. But if not, you'll have to install RENV as a package. Hopefully everybody here is somewhat familiar with what I'm saying with like RStudio libraries and packages. Um, if not, feel free to ask questions, especially during the interactive bit. So after you have the RENV library into your RStudio, you're going to type in that code, RENV two colons restore in the parentheses, then that'll automatically put all of the libraries that you need for data pages into your environment. And then now everything's good. You can make your changes. You can do anything that you want that you feel comfortable with. In this example that I showed here, I just added some text called test change. And I added it in the index.qmd file. The index file is essentially the home page, so it's what you see first when you click on your data pages link. And then you can preview your changes by clicking on that render button. And that's a good way to see if everything's working all right. If everything works all right, then once it's done, then it should load up on a browser what your data page looks like so you can see your changes before you push it to GitHub. And if it doesn't work, then you can see what buggy thing happened. And then once you're good with your changes, then you can commit and push your changes to GitHub. Another example why I like GitHub Desktop is once it's like tracking everything that you're changing into the file. And then so you can easily click on commit when you're done and then push, and it does it all automatically. I know there's ways to use like the command prompt to do this as well, but I find it easier to use this user interface. So, and then if it worked, your changes should also show up on your data pages website once you click on it as well. All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Candice. So before we dive into the hands-on portion, I want to give people another chance to ask questions or ask us to go over again any part that was confusing. Everyone either understood everything or nothing. The two options when there's no questions. Hopefully everything. Okay, then let's move forward to the hands-on portion. So, giving you a few options for what to do, and of course you can feel free to, do something else. But here's kind of two ideas. So if you already like have our studio installed and are comfortable cloning a GitHub repo and want to like get into changing some code quickly, then what I would suggest you do is go through those developing locally steps with the starter repo that we've made for the ManyBabies 4 data. So this isn't live and done yet. This is just taking that template repo and changing a few things and adding a plot. So you can ignore all of the, like Rediviz API token stuff, set all that aside and just develop locally, clone this repo, and play around with it. Some things you can do are open that config file and adjust which values are used in the scatter plot. You can add a ggplot of whatever you want. And if you are brave, you can open one of the observable JS modules and play around with those plots. Another thing you could do if you don't want to get into code, you don't want to clone a repo and open RStudio, is you can stay just online in your browser and instead go through those steps of setting up a new data page. And you can either use the ManyBabies 4 dataset that is powering the starter data page, or you can use your own dataset. And you can go through putting it on Rediviz, making a new data page repo for your new data page, and linking them up. Yeah, so those are kind of the two tracks. I think Heidi is going to help us divide into a few breakout rooms. So maybe we can have a few breakout rooms for each of these tracks so that people can kind of sort themselves. And then there's a bunch of us here that are here to help and provide some tech support. And we can hop around the breakout rooms, helping people with whatever issues come up.